Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and this is Hot for Your Health. Join us for conversations on the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture as we bring you tech innovators, thought leaders, and the movers and shakers who are transforming science fiction into your new health reality.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and I'm so excited that you've joined us today for Hot for Your Health, where I talk to innovators, movers and shakers, and healthcare leaders. You know, last year, actually, I partnered with Dr. Mark Miller, who is a legend in sports medicine, and the former president of the AOSSM, which is the Sports Society, to write this book, actually, Raising a Healthy Athlete, where we outline from our perspective as sports medicine doctors with a combined experience of literally more than 50 years, how to raise a healthy athlete. But I wanted to go a little deeper, and I wanted to give you real life examples of how you can also raise healthy, vital, active, joyful children. And if your goal is to get them into a college to play sports, or even the elusive dream of how to help them achieve their dream of playing pro sports. So I decided to bring a real expert in this field who just happens to be my husband. It's a privilege to have learned about his career, to see how he's raised our 6 athletic children. And so my husband, Peter Taglianetti, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and lifelong athlete. Notice I didn't say lifelong hockey player, lifelong athlete. So we're going to go deep, Peter, and talk about your perspective, the true expert in raising healthy youth athletes, because you were raised yourself, and then you raised and still raising 6 really active, really healthy people. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions parents have today. They play their kids year round. And from my perspective as a sports doctor, kids sustain adult-like injuries now because they play one sport year round. So let's take us back a lot of years until when you started playing sports. How did your parents do that? How did the village that raised you as a youth athlete do that? Because the proof is in the pudding. You're a pro athlete for 13 years with 2 Stanley Cups. What happened to you worked.
Well, you know, it's funny. Showing my age now, back in the 70s when I was growing up. So I was born in 1963, and we lived outside of Boston in a town called Framingham, a great neighborhood. There was many kids out there, all ages. So you got to play with your own age, younger kids or older kids, and you learn to develop. I think what happened in my case was my parents were much older, that having kids, and so they didn't. My dad was, working, or so he was 56 when he had me. So by the time I was, going through youth sports and stuff, he was still working at the time. And so he never was able to, they never came to practices or anything like that. And we basically got on our bikes and rode to whatever we need to get to, or if they were playing pickup down the street, and we developed everything on our own. So I didn't have the parents who were helicopter parents or always on top of everything. They didn't grow up in the hockey world. It was a new experience for them. So like my mom would stand up in the bleachers all by herself on one side. My dad would sit on the opposite side of the rink and not talk to anybody and just kind of go about their business. But, it's funny, growing up, I think we had and you hate to, when people talk about athletes and the generations, it's hard to talk about our generation compared to anybody else, because we were pretty much one of the last generations who were able to get on our bike and just leave for the day and never come home and basically come home at dinner time. Right. But you on your bike, you put your baseball glove in the summer times and you just rode, and whether you used it or not was irrelevant. But in case you were going to play, or you found a bunch of kids to play catch, that's what you did. You had everything with you. And you learn to develop that way, and the interactive skills of everyday life. So, but how I got started, my mom was older as well, and she tried to put me in everything from tap dancing lessons to I played every instrument under the sun. It was just something to keep me active all the time. Yeah, no, I'm not great. Hooked rugs, hooking rugs.
Bless her heart.
But I did everything. And her philosophy was if I was busy, I wouldn't get in any trouble. And that was her philosophy. So it was basically that. But the athletic part of it was basically what I did and how I achieved those things. But anyways, but you grow up playing baseball. I mean, that was like a first thing. Every little kid gets a baseball glove and a bat, and and you sit in your backyard with a little tee with a ball on it, and you whack it around your yard, and you go pick it up and bring it back. And but as far as hockey is concerned, so I was born in '63. Bobby Orr, legendary Bobby Orr, came to Boston in 1967, and even though hockey was big in Boston, it boomed, and that was one of the things all the kids in the neighborhood were playing. And I was the only kid left in the neighborhood that wasn't playing. And
that's an ironic thing.
Yeah. And but literally my mom said, you got to do something in the wintertime, one of those type things. So you couldn't get in the youth hockey program because it was all full. And she made a call to somebody that she used to work for that was the president of the Hockey Association. And they got me in at age 5, I think it was, that I started on the ice.
So were you behind? You hadn't been on skates since you were 2? There was not a stick in your hand?
I was never on the ice at age 2.
Yeah.
Or 3. I think it was around age 5. They got me on the ice in a beginner type thing. And it just took off. And it wasn't like something like you go, oh my God, I can't wait to go to hockey every day. It was something I just did. And sometimes if I didn't want to go, I didn't go. My parents didn't force me to go or do anything like that. And don't get me wrong, hockey is a really expensive sport. Even in 1960, in the 60s, it was still expensive. Ice time was I think it was like $60 an hour, back then. Now it's, $300 and something an hour for ice. And, but $60 back then was a lot of money, and skates were, basically $50 to $60 for a pair of skates, which is expensive, and sticks were $5. And we didn't have a lot of money, and I still don't know how they actually were able to do all this.
Listen, this Margaret McNamara, mother of yours, where there was a will, there is a way. And part of what I love that you just said, and I'm going to interrupt you and interject, is she did not know it. And she was just trying to get you out of the house and active. But what she was doing from an athlete perspective, because you are a tremendous all-around athlete. I mean, even with the surgeries that you've had that we'll get to, you remain an amazing athlete. But what she didn't know she was doing by sending you out of the house, making you get out of a chair like you would ever sit in a chair, is laying the groundwork for your healthy muscles, your mitochondria, the way you are coordinated from top to bottom as a child. And I think what I see, and the reason we wrote this book, is because there is digital now. There is the ability to stay inside all day. We have generations of children who are metabolically less healthy than your generation when you were raised, because you just had a physical. Your heart rate remains 48 because of the shape, that the foundation you had. So I'm giving a shout out to Margaret McNamara, your mother, and your dad, Felix, that they didn't know it, but they were setting you up for a lifetime of health by just getting you out of the house, right?
Yeah, well, that and, get out of the house.
I know you're driving me crazy.
You're a pain in the ass, to get out, and basically it was you got up at 7. You weren't allowed to sleep in. I mean, you slept in past 7:30. I mean, they were in there, get up and get outside, and by 8:30 you're outside trying to figure out what to do, and if nobody was around, you found a pile of dirt to play in. And
but what I also hear you saying is that you weren't overscheduled, and no one was pushing you. You had the innate desire to go play. Right? Sometimes we say we've taken the play out of play for children. It becomes their job because.
Well, it's funny. It's either you got to want to do something, you don't want to do something, or if somebody's forcing you to do something, you don't have 100% into it, and then you can see how the lackadaisical effort happens, whether it's on a hockey rink or a baseball field or a basketball court. If somebody's forcing you to do it. Because they want you to do it, you have that ebb and flow of emotions, and like, oh, I don't really want to go today, I'm tired, or whatever the case may be. But once you step on the court, it's got to be up to that individual person to say, no, if I'm here, I'm going to do this, and that's what we try to do with our kids, is like, if you're going 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not going to, if you half-ass it, I'll just pull you off the field or off the court or off the ice, and you don't have to do this at all. But you're doing something. So it's either you're playing the sports, or you're going to pick up a guitar, or you're going to play the drums, or you're going to get in something, but you're going to do something, or you're going to go to work, one or the other.
Well, and so I don't want to get too far ahead of the story, but so the 5 Taglianetti children chose to do sports, different sports, until they got out of school. Isabella, our youngest child, we continued that tradition with her. She was an elite ballet dancer. Then when she stopped doing that, she had to do other sports. So to keep them involved, but there's a difference. Let's go back to, okay, so Margaret McNamara made a phone call. She got you into the hockey leagues. You joined all the kids in town playing. How did it progress from 5 years old, just out on the ice, to up through junior high, high school, where there was some specialization? And you're also an elite baseball player, a third baseman, and so you had to make this critical choice. Tell us about that part of the journey and when you specialized.
Well, so going into youth sports and baseball, and when I was fortunate enough to live about a quarter of a mile from the hockey rink in my town, and I was fortunate enough to live near 4 baseball fields in my town, so I could get on my bike any day and go down there. And I turned out to be a rink rat. I turned out to be a baseball field rat. You know, basically go and watch other teams play. And a lot of times, teams, for example, I'd be down there and Little League, I'd be down there watching a game, and somebody on one of the teams didn't show up. They didn't have enough guys. And they go, hey, Pete, can you want to play? So I would just jump on another team and go play. I would do that.
You got a lot of reps.
Yeah, I would do that constantly. Just go down there, or I went to the rink, and even if I didn't have equipment with me, I'd sit there and watch other teams play. It was just something.
What did you learn from that?
I just watching how they skated, and what they did, and mostly it was the older kids that I went to watch, and then ended up knowing some coaches on other teams and whatever the case may be. Even back then, there was
Were you networking?
Kind of, I guess you'd call that.
This 10-year-old networking the coaches at the rink.
But there'd be ice time at like 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, and my mom would call and say, hey, would mind if Peter come out and play, to skate with you guys, and a lot of them said, that's fine, just come on out, and no big deal. It wasn't like I'm taking any room up. It was just one extra player and did that stuff. But I did that constantly, and I kept on playing and whatever, and we, when you get to the squirt, like squirt level, back then there was only 2 travel teams, an A team and a B team, and a house league team. And a house league was basically 6 or 7 teams that the kids stayed in, and the B played, and then there was an A team that you traveled. Both those teams traveled, and you played tournaments and things like that. So you would play into those things, and then you progress, and then you go to the Pee Wee and Bantam and midget levels, and do the same exact thing. Nowadays, there's 5 travel teams, and the problem with the 5 travel teams, just real quick, is some of those kids on those travel teams aren't good enough to be on those teams. But it's a moneymaker for a lot of people. And so, hey, we're going to put a travel team together. You want to play. And so you have kids who aren't as competitive or ability-wise playing with kids who are really good ability. And these kids don't learn anything. The kids with the least ability don't learn anything. They need to play in a lower level and get better, and then
pick up their skills.
Then move up. It's like that in baseball. That you put a team together in a little league team, and you have maybe the first 3 kids who can hit the ball, and the rest of the kids are afraid. But they take the 3 best kids of each team at the end of the year and put them on an all-star team.
So what's the balance, though? And I don't want to get too. I don't want to get too lost in the details. But what is the balance then? Because on one hand, you and I are very firm on the kids have to be involved in something all the time. And it just happened. Their mother and you are very talented athletes, and I'm a very good athlete. So we have athletes in our house. But what is the balance for kids between only playing for an elite team and just playing because it's great way to raise kids?
The point I was trying to make is that now, if somebody doesn't make a team, the first thing the parent does is, hey, I'm going to start my own team.
Okay. So
and so instead of telling that kid, well, you don't have to be on this travel team, go back here
and work
hard, and then come up. But now none of these parents want kids. Oh, I don't want my kid to fail. instead of failing, you learn how to get better. And that's
what is then the road to elite? Because if the thought amongst that I encounter with parents is they want the best opportunities for their kids so the kid can progress to college and maybe the pros, and there's a weird pressure right now. So how do they balance that? You've raised children.
Well, no kid gets better or advance in their technique or their skill level by forcing a 70-pound kid to play against a 120-pound kid.
Gotcha.
That is not going to work. Maybe this 70-pound kid, in a couple of years is going to do his growth spurt. But a lot of these parents now are taking this kid because the parent wants this kid to play at that level, but the kid's not ready for it. And you can't teach a kid not to be afraid. And you can tell right away in a baseball field or a hockey rink or a football field if a kid's afraid to get hit. And that kid, once that happens, he loses that extra step and then he becomes afraid. And it's just a weird process that back when I was playing in youth sports, no parents ever coached the team. Gotcha. There were volunteers who came in, they were putting this team together, and we're going to put the best team out here. It doesn't matter who your parent is. We're putting the best kid out here. And then if a kid made the team, there's no guarantee the kid's going to play. Now, parents complain if the kid doesn't get enough ice time or enough time in the field or enough playing time in a football field. Parents complain all the time. The expectation of parents are whacked right now. It is crazy, the amount of pressure the parents put on the kids to play at a level that they don't belong at yet.
Do you know the average age you know this, but many people don't know that by 13, 70% of all little children who were active in sports quit. And it's because research has been done. It's because of this. It's no longer fun. The pressure is too much. It's no longer fun. The joy is gone and they just 70% quit at 13. And then what we get is years of sedentary living, which this is why so many children in our country are obese at this point and not growing into healthy adults. So you're in junior high, you're being a rink rat, you're being a ball field rat. You went to a public high school with thousands of kids. So to get on the hockey team of that school, you had to be a good athlete. What happened next? How did you distinguish yourself? Did you even think of college then, or you're just like, I'm going to play my ass off today?
No.
What was the mindset that you had?
Well, no. First of all, nobody in my family ever went to college.
So that wasn't even.
Actually, I was ready to go to the Marine Corps or something and figure it out. And my dad was a crane operator in construction, and so that was the only thing we ever knew was that type of life. But real quick, before we get to the high school and all that stuff. So growing up, I played hockey from September until March or so.
So one season.
And once the season was over, the skates went in the bag, the equipment went in the bag. I got my baseball glove, and I went from March until July or August until baseball season was over. And so I stayed true to that. I've never played. I went to a couple camps or did some things in the summer, hockey-wise, but I didn't play. I didn't play year-round. So conversely, I played with a lot of guys who did play all year long. They played on every all-star team, every team they get into, every league they get
in the 60s,
in the 70s. Yeah, every summer there's summer leagues, there's all this, and they played 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
I didn't know that.
They did it, and they were pretty good. They were good ball players too, but this is how they chose. But anyways, as we progressed farther and farther, so in my hometown, we had 4 high schools. There was 2 public schools, a Catholic school, and a vocational school. And by the time we got into high school, all the kids that we grew up from squirts all the way up to midgets, and we're going to disperse into the different schools. 70 or 80% of the kids went to my school. There was about 20 that went to the other public school. There was a couple kids that went to the Catholic school, and 1 or 2 kids went to the vocational school. So right away, our team was dispersed. So now the core group of guys we had other guys had to come in to fill that role. So guys that maybe never played with us before or anything like that, and they had to fill a role to round out our team. And we had really good teams. Our rinks held maybe 3,000-4,000 people, and we would get that a game. We were excited. We won the championship a few times. But anyways, but once we got into high school, once again, never even thought about college. Never even. I mean, I was getting letters, I was getting stuff or whatever it is, but I never thought about it. It was, why am I going to go to college type thing? And it wasn't until my junior year. So I started in the varsity as a sophomore, and it wasn't the end of my sophomore year. End of sophomore year, I got invited to play in. There's a guy in my team, Stephen Giatrellis, his name was, and his dad was connected all over, whatever it was. And there was a thing in Boston called Hockey Net in Boston. And back then it was just 4 teams. There were 4 teams. There was North, South, East, and West, depending where you were. So we were on the South team, and then and basically it was 80 kids from around the Boston area. That was the elite kids of Boston, and they split them all up. And then you had a week-long tournament in August. And
wait, August was before hockey season, so you were in baseball season.
I was in baseball season, yeah, and. So I would go play. It wasn't a week long. It was probably about like 4 days long, to tell you the truth. So, but it was a round robin. You played each team once, and then it was a championship, and consolation type thing. And so every D1 college hockey player so as a sophomore, so the kids that were 2 years older than me they all went BC, BU, Northeastern, whatever the case is. They were already going to college.
Were you afraid to fail?
I was embarrassed to fail. I don't know if I was afraid, but if I did something, I was embarrassed as hell.
So did that keep you from, because I think people sometimes are tentative because they're embarrassed to fail. They don't want to make a failure. Or for some people, that drives them to ensure that they're working hard enough they don't fail. So.
But here's the thing, preparation in all sports is analytical for the first 10, 15 seconds, or in football, like the first 5 seconds is analytical. A guard goes this way, a tackle goes this way, there's a hole, running back runs through it. After that, it's helter-skelter. So the first, baseball is it's a slower, methodical sport. And I had a coach, and let me just delve in this, take about like 2 minutes. I had 2 baseball coaches named Brian Alexson and Bill Robinson. And so there was a travel Colt League team. We were 15, 16 years old. And we practiced, if we didn't have a game, we practiced every day. And it was batting practice, and it was game situations, run first, 1 out, and you they hit the ball, and wherever it was, you had to think, if it's single, throw the ball to third. So it's analytical. We were programmed.
It was a play.
We knew exactly what was going on. So you didn't have to think about it.
Yeah.
You just reacted every time. And as soon as something happened, and as soon as it goes a fly out, there's 2 outs now. You yell out, there's 2 outs. Base hit.
So
same thing.
Knew what to do next.
You knew what to do. Everybody was yelling out, and you learned analytically how to process the situation. In a baseball game, which is slow and methodical. Okay, so now take that into hockey. Hockey is, it looks seemingly, pretty straightforward, but is a bad bounce, a broken stick, the puck comes off the glass the wrong way. There's a lot of little things. And so you have to, in your mind at a very quick moment, have to think that if this happens, I'm going here. If this happens, I got to get back over here.
I call that reading the ice. Is that what it is?
It's anticipation. It's a whole lot of things.
Seeing the field.
Seeing everything around. And so when I learned that baseball aspect of it, every time I was on the ice against another team, I knew exactly the center iceman was a left-hander. I knew the right winger was a left-hander. I knew the right wing was a right-hander. One of those. And so if somebody was chasing me, I knew where his stick was going to be. So I knew if I tried to make a pass, that his stick was going to be over here, that I can pass it up the other way. So there was just little things, and you had to know where all your guys were, and who was the best player on their team. I had to look up the clock. What's the score of the game? How much time on the clock?
And you're assimilating that instantaneously.
It's all instantaneously. Like you sit there, and so you have to process it all the time. Every time something moves, is a counteraction to it. And so I learned that at a very young age in baseball to take it into hockey. And then when you get into, now you're playing high school hockey, it's the same thing. It's like now, even though I don't know a lot of the guys on the other team, I can see who the best player is because he's probably wearing the C on his shirt. You know, he's the captain. He's probably the best player on the team. So now every time he's on the ice, I'm watching for him. Then you develop quickly who their best defenseman is, you know, or you look at their goalie. What does he do? Can he handle the puck? Can't handle the puck. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in your head. And now these kids, they're so programmed robotic-wise that they can't process
That's something you say all the time, because when we were still in Pittsburgh, you were asked pretty often to do camps and on the ice things with parents and kids. And what you often commented was that it's just a different way to train kids now. They're not trained to be analytical. They're more trained with, you would say things like go fast down the ice and then don't look up. You're like, you always have to look up when you approach the boards. They're led to skate with their heads down. So it's a different kind of training now. And it's of your opinion, it's not always beneficial to be trained that way.
No, right now, unfortunately, it is a different, as we get farther into this conversation, hockey used to be a free-flowing sport where you had to react what was happening, and it was just, the play just kind of went on and on. My college coach, who turned out to be, who's Lou Lamorello, we were system-based, and it was, and the same thing. We drilled. So in a game, you didn't have to think about it, but you always knew where everybody was because this is where you're supposed to be. And they call it the neutral zone trap now in the NHL. Well, now it's different. Sorry. So he became with the New Jersey Devils, and he instituted this system, and literally just slowed down the game to help his team and frustrate all the other teams. And they ended up winning a couple Stanley Cups or something like that because of it. But it turned into robotic. I'm not saying it's a bad thing in the NHL because they were very, very successful. But young kids who have coaches, and don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge any parent who wants to coach. But a lot of the parents who coach now never played the game.
That's hard. And
so they go to these coaching clinics where people come in to teach them how to coach, and they teach them how to be robotic. Right wing has to be here. The center has to be here. The only thing starts in a game is you have a center iceman, two wingers, two defensemen, and a goalie. After that, the forwards can interchange anywhere they want. I mean, depending where they end up on the ice, they just have to be over there and they kind of understand the play. But now these kids are trained to be here and skate
in a straight line.
Yeah. And one of the big pet peeves, and it still kills me today, and I see it in the NHL, is that if you don't have the puck on your stick, there's no reason why you should have two hands on your stick. But they're taught, put two hands on your stick, put two hands. Why? And I use this example all the time. If you're skating down the ice, and there's a guy next to you with a mats and whatever, and he's a sprinter, he's going down the ice with his arms going like this. If you have two hands on your stick going down the ice, you're going like this. It's not as, you don't go as fast. I don't get it. Even if you have the puck in your stick and you want to go fast, all you have to do is push it ahead of you. But these kids sit, and these parents keep two hands and they have no idea what they're talking about. And it drives me absolutely crazy.
I know. We're very opinionated in our family.
But anyways, that's the robotic part of the sports that these kids are being taught. Take it in baseball. I see kids in youth baseball now who don't know how to catch a ball. They keep their hand out like this the whole time, where all they have to do is, as the ball's coming, just bring it back. And so it's not a hard slap. It's kind of a softer thing. And what that does is, if you catch it out here, then you have to bring it in, get the ball, and throw it. But if it's one motion. It's faster. So it's the ability of the kids and the ability of the coaches who are teaching kids the wrong things to do. And then once you get that habit,
it's hard to unlearn.
It's hard to break it.
So let's go back, because we're getting way ahead. Yep. Let's go back. We left you in your story. You were invited as a sophomore to an all-star showcase. I remember this story. You went to the showcase, and then was that when you started seriously being recruited to go to college as a sophomore? And you're like, oh, I'll go play for college.
So what they do is they brought college coaches in to coach these teams, to coach the teams.
Oh, to coach the teams.
So each team had a college coach. My coach was a guy named Mike Odessa. He was the head coach of RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. And we just hit it off and, and whatever. And
so did he become a mentor for you?
Kind of a mentor. He would check in every now and again. Like he saw me, hey Pete, how you doing? One of those type things. And it was probably the first letter I got being recruited. But anyways, but those the guys, and they kind of, as you're playing the game, now they're kind of giving you like little tidbits of what to do and what to look for and things like that. But they didn't really coach. It was more symbolic. They were behind it. But the idea, there was 4 college coaches there. All the coaches from around the country were there.
Right.
They come in, and this was a big deal because for like 10 years, it was just those 4 teams. And then they added, an underclassman, like a sophomore team. And then now I don't even know if they're still doing it now, but it ended up being like 20-something teams, and it kind of diluted the situation.
But is that where you think people first found out about you?
Yeah.
Or they knew of you already because you were a star player? So that all-star opportunity was huge in your career because those college...
They never told me otherwise, but yes, I think...
Saw you.
Yes, yeah.
And then you began to be recruited. So let's flip over to our own children. At what point did 3 of the boys played collegiate football? At what point in their upbringing did you start hearing, because I met them when they were already players, this kid could play in college?
Well, take them back when they were younger. So right around when...
They were all... I just want to say this. They were all sport athletes.
Well,
they didn't play football year round.
No, they were doing something.
They were doing
whatever season it was, they were doing something. Yeah. So you figure it out. So, but it was right when they were like 6 years old or 6 years old, 5, 6, whatever. Video games started coming out. So now you have to play that.
Mario was out then, right?
You have to, kind of play that. All right, you can play for a little bit, but you're not staying there all day type thing. And but once again, they grew up in a neighborhood that there was a lot of kids. They were able to go outside and do things and whatever.
Would you guys send them outdoors? Just go find something to play? Yeah, you lived on a cul-de-sac?
Yeah, get out. Yeah. Well, get out of the house. Just turn the spigot on if you want water. Don't just like I did. You don't have to come in the house and get water. But when they were hockey in Pittsburgh at the time, it was a big sport. But it didn't explode till we won the Stanley Cups. And then everybody...
In 91
and 92. Yeah, so Patrick was born in 87. Yes, John and Ian were born
oldest.
in 89. We won it in 90. 91, I mean, and won it in 92. So now they're, 4, 5, 6 years old. And so, all right, we're going to play sports, T-ball, whatever. And then when they got, I think when they're 8 years old, they start playing football and, and then...
They also played basketball.
They played basketball too. And they did play hockey. They were on the ice when they were like 3, 4 years old. And they played, did little things here and there, but nothing major. I wasn't going to force them to play hockey just because I did. I mean, that was just but they continued. They played in a couple leagues and stuff like that, but there was not a lot of ice time in Pittsburgh. Wasn't a lot of rinks. But after we won the cups, they started sprouting up. So next thing you know, all right, there was a league in Mount Lebanon. There's a league up in Harmarville. There was a league in Cranberry. There was a league in at South Point. So anyway, so now there's rinks around. So they were able to play on these teams. But then you get to a situation where they had to make a decision. I made them make the decision of, what do you want to do? If you want to continue in hockey, we're going to have to go play on this team in this township and travel all the time, and you're not going to be around any of your core group of friends.
I thought it was also that to really achieve the way you had, they would have had to go billet. And you guys decided not to billet.
No, not at that age. No, but 8, 9, 10 years old, it's like, no, it's you're playing these sports. You can play 4 sports if you want to. Yeah. They can overlap them. That's not the issue. The issue is now all of a sudden, if you want to get better and be on a different team and go all these tournaments and whatever, you're gonna have to play on this team that's based out of this township, which is about a half hour.
Right, you have to travel like people travel now.
But once you're on that team, because you're going to be at an elite team, you got to travel to Buffalo, you got to travel to Detroit, whatever. And so you're gone from Thursday until Sunday, and you're going to be practicing the other days at this rink. And so you're not going to be with your co-group of friends. So you guys make a decision what you want to do. You can play hockey, but the other sports are gone, or you can play football, basketball, and baseball with your core group of friends. We're going to play basketball. We're going to do this with our core group of friends. Perfect. That's 3 sports. We're all good. They still continue to play hockey.
Yeah.
But they were able
just not travel.
We're not doing the travel
thing. No one was going to become a pro hockey player.
So they played Little League all up. And then once they got into middle school, they stopped playing baseball, and it was basketball, football. And once they got out of high school, once they got into high school, they went right to football. And that was their sport.
So let's pause right there, because you, as a player, didn't specialize through high school. You could have gone to and played you could have gone through the baseball system or the hockey.
Right.
So that's 18 for you. The boys didn't specialize until they were 14, 15. Some of the kids, young men now, they're older men right now, on the current Penguins team, I know this because we were in that building, didn't specialize to only hockey. And they're some of the most widely successful players in the history of hockey until they were 15.
Right. So freshman year in high school.
That's my point.
Freshman year in high school, they decided they could I got to go. So they were in high school.
Yeah.
They still played hockey, even though they played football, but it wasn't like
they were picking up hockey.
Right. But they were still playing
they
sports.
Specialized the sport.
Yes.
So then you're in high school. We've gotten the Taglianetti kids through high school in their sport. Even Isabella, our youngest, played through high school for her sports. And now colleges are started to looking at people. Talk to me about how that was for you. You followed your coach, the pressures and I also want to talk about how you approached, or didn't, frankly, maybe the story I have is wrong, for our kids who played in college. Because I think there's some wisdom on how to push your kids, how to not push your kids, how to spend money on leagues and how not to spend money on leagues versus saving for college. Because what I've seen as a sports doctor, I've seen parents bank their kids' entire future on getting a college scholarship. So that's why we're traveling 4 days a week, 12 months a year, because my kid's going to make it. And that may be true, although we're going to talk about some data you pulled for us about the true percentage. And I've had, when I was the medical director at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex, I told you about this story. I had a family that their twin boys were good, but not so good that they were being scouted at 17. So those parents continued to pay, and these were working class people, pay all the money to support their kids through all these travel teams on the whisper and a prayer that their kid was going to make good. And they never saved one dime for further education, whether it was trade school or college. And their kids didn't make it.
Yep. No, it's a long list of people.
And there was no option. There was no money for school. And there was no hockey offer.
Nope.
And that broke my heart because I took care of both of those twins. So I want to talk about getting a kid from a talented high school kid into a college situation and how parents should think about that, and eggs in all one basket, all those things. Because let's put out these data now. You pulled these data for me. The percentage of kids, high school participants, let's just pick football, that make it into the NCAA for football is, you start out with 1 million kids playing football, 70,000 kids make it. That's only 7%. If you want to go play Division I football, that's 3%. Or let's choose another sport like soccer. 500,000 kids, boys, we can do girls in a minute, play soccer in high school. Only 5% of them get a college scholarship. Only 1% of them play D1, where you actually get money to play. So I think these are important data because we got to examine, what are you playing for as a child? For enjoyment, for health? Or are we only playing on the slim 1% chance you're going to get a college scholarship? And what is the thinking for parents from the perspective of pro athlete, raiser of 6 children, father of 6 children?
Well, people need to be realistic. Not only the player has to be realistic of his talent and goals, but the parents have to be realistic of their kids' talent and goals. Unfortunately, we're in the everybody gets a trophy stage, so my kid's really good, blah, blah, blah. He made this team. Well, should he have made this team? Or are you just, because you can pay the $20,000 to be on this team, you're buying your way into this thing. But so I'm in high school, and we had some really good talented players, but the kids who played year round, by the time they got to college and they went to other schools, nobody on my team went Division I. But they were smaller schools. Some went to like Salem State or wherever the case might be, and really talented players, but they were just burnt out at that time. But because now hockey is in high school, you practice two, 3 days a week, have a game a game on Wednesday, game on Saturday, and you maybe practice twice in between. Mm-hmm. But there are hour practices. It's not that big of a deal. All of a sudden you go to college, you're practicing every day. Mm-hmm. Back then, now these kids are the colleges are so pampered now. These kids get their own training tables. They get all this stuff. Back then, it's
a job for them in college. I mean, to give these college kids credit, it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a job.
It's a job now. And but some of these kids, they got burnt out and they just stopped playing.
That is so critical.
That is the reality of some of these kids who, like I said, mentally they were strong. They just got burnt out. I don't want to do this anymore. I've just been doing it like every year since I was 6 years old.
It's been a job.
It's a job.
We were just at a dinner party, and then I'm going to let you continue. This happens. This doctor had nurtured her kid through the whole soccer lead up, right? He was in line for a D1 scholarship. Junior year of high school, he was so burnt out. He's like, I'm going to have a childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he didn't play his senior year, and he doesn't want to play in college. It's not because he couldn't. It's not because they didn't spend a decade of their lives. It's that as a sports doctor, I see tired children coming into my office. And sometimes I just ask them outside the presence of their parents, do you want to play? Because we can get you there, but do you want to play?
And the other thing you have to realize too is that in high school and stuff, back then nobody worked out. We didn't go to the gym. We didn't do anything. We
won't tell people what you ate in your.
Yeah, no, it's you when I turned pro, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like it is today. This stuff, but all of a sudden these kids from high school going to college now. Not only you have to skate, you have to go to classes. Now you have to work out. You have to do it. So now you got a bigger burden on you to do all these things. So, and it happens to many more kids than people realize. And even if they don't quit, they just have that laissez-faire. I don't really care. I'm just going to go and do my stuff.
They're just tired.
I'm going to do my 4 years and get the hang type thing. Yeah, they're just physically, mentally tired that they don't want to do this anymore. So, anyways, I ended up going to Providence College, and the reason why I chose Providence College. One, they had the nicest rink in the East at the time.
Yeah.
There was a kid from my hometown. He was graduated 4 years before I did. Went to Providence College, and he got me involved in the recruiting process with Providence. And we had a really good incoming freshman class. So the number one person in the country, his name was Bobby Carpenter. He was the number one rated prospect in the country. He committed to Providence. A kid named Richie Costello, who is my high school rival, was like the number 3 guy in the country.
Natick?
From Natick, Massachusetts. Yeah, he was the number 3 guy in the country. He was going there. A kid named Paul Gay out of Rhode Island. He was in the top 10 in the country, getting recruited there. And then another kid from Natick was going there. A kid from Canton, Mass. So we had probably one of the strongest freshman classes going into Providence at the time, and so we all went there.
But you followed your coach.
So Lou, he was my coach there, Lou Lamorello. So he recruited me, whatever it is, and so I knew I was going there. I went to college there because if I went to a big school, the BCs, the BUs, whatever, and I had to sit in a classroom with 100 other kids, I never would have went to class.
Right. So you knew yourself.
I knew I would never go to class. Providence, the biggest class I had was 80 kids, but that was 4 days a week in the morning, and then on Fridays you had to go take your tests. But that was a class that if I got a B in that class and a D in all the other classes, my average would have been like a high C, low B.
And you could play?
Yeah, it was just like, so, but that was the one class that you were like, oh my God, you got to go do this thing. But all the other classes were like 20 kids, 25 kids.
You would notice if
they would notice. And plus he came around and he'd walk around campus and see you, and he would have he'd have note cards with, hey, there's Peter, 10:30, he was supposed to be, why aren't you in class? It's like, so he was like all over you, and everything was regimented. We had all our classes had to be done by 1. We're on the ice at 2:30, blah, blah, blah. And, freshmen had a study hall. You had to go do all these things. It was actually something that was going to really help me. So I didn't play at all my freshman year. I played like 2 games. Towards the end of the year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I started my sophomore year. Because there were 4 seniors. I got recruited, so there were 4 seniors, 2 juniors, and 2 sophomores.
Oh, they had to play. Uh-huh.
And I could have went to another school and played right away, but I went there.
You gave yourself your own red shirt.
Yeah, so I kind of figured out what I was going to do, and I could have stayed another year and redshirted, but I told him I wasn't going to stay. So it was one of those. So that's why he played me at the end of that year. Anyway. But I play with kids who are like, and I'm looking at these college kids going, can't miss, can't miss, can't miss. These guys are unbelievable. Here's the problem with young kids nowadays and not understanding what happens when you're on a team. You have to adjust your game accordingly to who you are and what team you're on and who you're playing and things like that. You just can't keep doing the same thing, because there's a million kids who'll do exactly what you do. And so did everything. So Bobby Carpenter didn't come. He turned pro. He was like the number 2 person in the NHL draft that year. But everybody else came, and we had great teams. We did all these things. Now you got to take what you did in college to the pros. So how do you do that? And
you mean high school to college?
From high school, I could play a certain way. Once I get to college,
I had to adapt
to. I couldn't just be the guy take the puck up the ice all the time. I'm in college now.
You had to distinguish yourself.
Yeah, and you pick and choose your battles and all that kind of stuff. So once you did all that and you made a career for yourself, now you got to take that to another level. Now remember, there's 23 guys, 24 guys on a college team. Well, those 23 guys were the best guys on their high schools, on their high school team. Yeah. And now you're there. Now you take all those kids, and now you got to go pro. And so all those kids who are the best high school youth hockey high school players, and each year it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Now you have to distinguish yourself from the other kids who are the best players on their teams.
How does that, before we move on, how does that jump? It's about a 10%, right? 10%, less than 10% make it to the next level. 1% makes it to this level. What is the mental adjustment from high school? You come out as superstar, you join a team of superstars. How do you find your niche? How should kids think about the mindset of, and you were very, very deliberate in making your own space. How did you do that?
And I say this, no matter if you're playing a sport or working.
In life.
You have to find a niche.
And you have to exploit it.
You have to exploit that. You have to exploit that niche. So if you can shoot the puck really well, then you need to shoot your puck every time you get the puck.
And that's you.
That's you. And then you whatever. If you're a hitter, well, you got to hit. You just can't pick and choose when you hit. You got to make sure that the other team knows that they can buy you. You're going to hit them. You're going to hit them all the time. So you have to find what you do well and do it and exploit it. Once you exploit that, then you can venture out into other avenues of rounding out your game.
Yeah.
What is going to set you apart at this particular time against everybody else? What you do best. So you do that, you drill it. You're physical, you whatever the case may be. If you're an offensive defenseman, you still have to play defense, but you're jumping up the ice all the time. So now you have to pick and choose when you're going to go up the ice and do all these things, and you exploit that of it, and then you can do a little bit, do all these other things. So anyways, we got all these kids, and so now in Boston, I mean, every college team is loaded with talented players. My sophomore year in college, we make it to the Final Four, and we ended up coming.
The Frozen Four.
Well, it wasn't for the marketing. It was a Final Four.
Good.
And we ended up coming in third place my sophomore year, and that's when I got drafted by the Winnipeg Jets.
Yes.
And so got to go junior year, or whatever the case is. In our senior year, we ended up going to the Final Four again, and we ended up coming in second place. And it was pretty much all our goaltender at the time because he was really good. We didn't have that as talented a team our senior year that we did, but our goalie was unbelievable. But anyways, so we finished second in the country. We come back to the school, and at the time, Lou Lamorella was not our coach. I mean, he was the athletic director, but he still knew all of the GMs in the league and all that stuff because he negotiated a ton of contracts. So John Ferguson, who is the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets, contacted Lou, and he negotiated my very first contract. And so he calls me and he says, "Hey, Winnipeg's calling. They want to, And I said, "Okay." And he said, "If you don't mind, I'll do it for you." And I said, "That's fine." And good, I didn't have to pay an agent fee for that one, which is really, really good.
You kept your money.
Yeah. So we, it took about a week after the season ended, and he calls me and says, "All right, we negotiated a contract. You're all good. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to, and I'll drive you into Boston." So he drove me into Boston, stayed at the Marriott Long Wharf. I still remember it well. We had dinner and stuff like that the next day. He got me to the airport, and I flew and met the team. So there was 2 games left in the regular season.
You were still a student in college.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's taking you to join your pro team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I flew from Boston to Minneapolis to Calgary, and Calgary's southern Alberta and Edmonton's northern Alberta. And in between in the Rocky Mountains is Banff Springs. So there was 2 games left in the regular season for the Winnipeg Jets. And they had 4 days off before they had to play those last 2 games. So they went into Banff, and they're going to stay there for a couple days. So that's where I'm going to meet them. So I flew into Calgary. One of the trainers, equipment manager, came, picked me up, drove me up there. No idea. Never.
You've never met these guys.
Never met a soul. It's like a 2-hour drive or whatever. I get into Banff. I get in a hotel room, and nobody's around because they were at practice. So I just got there, and I'm watching TV and whatever it is, and then the door opens up and a guy comes in. He walks in, and it turns out to be Randy Carlisle.
Get out.
So Randy Carlisle was my first roommate. And they told him I was going to be there and stuff. So we were bullshitting and stuff. And so, anyways, later on, we're just sitting there talking. And I said, "You're not going to believe this," because in 1981 he won the Norris Trophy when he was with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
And and he's a really good friend of mine. But I made the mistake, and I say this all the time. I told him that his poster's up on my wall, on my college wall, because it was just he won the Norris Trophy, anyways, and has not let me live that down.
We should put it up somewhere in our house just and take a picture.
So I met him in 1985. Yeah. To this day, he would stay. He would remind me that I had that. Anyway, so the next day I go to practice, and so the last 2 games of the regular season was the second to last game against Edmonton, and the last game of the season was against Calgary. And then the Jets had to open up against Edmonton in the first round of the playoffs. So I only practiced for like 2 days, and then we got to go to Edmonton to play in that second to last game. So I didn't play in that game, and not a big deal. And so I was sitting there watching them, and it was just an amazing, because it was like.
Were you overwhelmed? What was the mindset shift from I'm a college sophomore, now I'm, living next to the priest in college, and now I'm in the league?
Yeah. And you've been to hockey games before, pro games and stuff like that. But it was just there as
on the bench.
But there as a fan. I wasn't on the bench at this time, so I was up in the stands, up in the press box, and with the other guys who weren't playing, whatever it is. And it was just really humbling, because you're like, oh my God, whatever. And so game's over. We go out to the next day. We travel to Calgary, and then the next night we're going to play against the Flames, and so they put me in the lineup. Last game of the season, no big deal. And I'm like, I'm going to get my shot to play here. So it was like my very first shift on the ice, or second shift on the ice. And hard to explain, but the benches are here and Calgary's down this end, we're this end. And their superstar, and a guy named Hakan Lube comes down.
That's an actual name.
Hakan, Hakonlob.
Yep. Okay.
Little guy, little Swedish guy. And so he comes down, and right by the end of our bench is the blue line. And he comes down and just gets over the blue line and stops. And the referees blow the whistle dead. Okay.
Gotcha.
And this is how you distinguish yourself from, whatever. And what I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but it turned out this way.
I thought it was intentional.
Well, it was intentional. So once he stopped, I just went up and the whistle blew. I hit him after the whistle, and he was about 4 feet away from the boards and went like head first into the boards. But it was a clean hit, but it was just late. And their whole bench jumped off their bench, and it was a bench clearing brawl. My very first shift, like second shift on the ice. It was like nuts. And in college, I mean, you don't fight, so you didn't know how to fight. And so
you didn't know how to fight?
You never fought on ice before. So all of a sudden it's like people coming after you and everybody's jumping in, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so that gets over. I go to the penalty box. There was like 6 of us, and it was 3 of them and 3 of us in the penalty box. So we keep playing, second period. This other guy, his name was Eddie Beers, and I remember this. He comes down and I just take a run at him, and I nicked his shoulder and I just missed him. I literally I think I would have knocked him out if I hit him, but I just nicked his shoulder and missed him. So, all right, I missed him, no big deal. So I'm skating, all of a sudden he jumps me from behind, he starts pounding me, whatever it was. And I was like, what the I didn't know what the hell was going on. And he's like, oh, you rookie, you're hitting, we come after me, one of those type things. Anyway, so after the game, John Ferguson, our GM, who, if anybody knows the history of hockey, John Ferguson was the toughest guy to ever play in the NHL. He ran shotgun in the Montreal Canadiens for like 10, 12 years. Every star, he beat the crap out of everybody. He had this like big head. He had big sausage fingers. He was just he had big nose. He just snort, and he's like, he's just like mean as shit. But nicest guy in the world. But he gets him like amped up. So he comes in the locker room and he takes his jacket, throws it off, goes, and he points at me and goes, this is what I want on my team. This is what I want on my team. So now I'm on his radar.
Right. You distinguish yourself.
I'm on
right.
his radar. So I wasn't just some rookie came up and whatever.
Not just a worker bee.
And so anyways, I knew, so I'm on his radar. So that game ended. We go play in the playoffs. So I get to play in the very first playoff game against Edmonton Oilers. So on the bench, we get a penalty. We have to kill a penalty. The beat go up. All right, get it. I look up. It was Wayne Gretzky, Yuri Curry, Glenn Anderson, Mark Messier, and Paul Coffey. Those are 5 guys in the other team. I'm going like, my sphincter went. So it's like, damn it. So the puck dropped. There was like a little bit of scuffle, whatever it is. I got it and I fired it down the ice and I made a beeline to the bench. I was like, I was almost hyperventilating. Goes, oh my God, I can't, because those guys were the elite of the elite of the elite.
Why did your shift was over? You had to get off? Why did you go back to the bench?
My shift lasted 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Why?
Because I was scared to death.
You didn't want to go down to
No, I was so hyped up. I was just like, oh my God. And I had to settle my nerves.
So someone jumped on for you.
Yeah, so I got off, somebody jumped on, and so then it went, I just kind of went, all right.
And now you're ready to play.
I got this. So anyway, we ended up losing the series, no big deal. So it's over. I end up go back with the team in Winnipeg, and I still haven't signed my contract yet.
Oh, you're playing pro ball without?
Well, it's agreed to, but I just haven't signed the paper. So we get back to Winnipeg, and so I signed it and all that stuff, and they gave me my bonus, which I was like, what the hell happened to it? I didn't realize the taxes had to come out of it right away. It's like, damn.
I know.
And then it's Canadian money. Then I had to exchange that, and then it was just like, what the hell just happened here? Anyway, so yeah, that was but now, so go back to when you're in high school, you had to distinguish yourself in college.
That's
Once you're in college, you have to distinguish yourself
in the pros.
And so that was in the pitch.
How did our boys distinguish themselves? Because they did.
Well,
because this distinguished themselves is a common thread that I tell my surgical residents. You chose to fight people to distinguish yourselves.
Well, let me go real quick. So the guys in college that I was like, can't miss. Now, it's not all
It's not all just skill.
No, but it's being in the right place, the right time, and doing the right thing at the right place, right time.
Is there a mindset aspect?
Well, no, but once again, so these guys we all have the same mindset. You know, they're all really successful, really good hockey players. They were really good baseball players. They, you know, some of them played basketball. They were athletes. They had a good mindset. But once you get to that next level, same thing. Now you can't keep doing the same thing because there's a lot of people doing the same thing you do. So now they have to switch up.
Just as good.
So now they may not have been in the situation where I was in, where I was able to go out and distinguish myself right away. So they were on a team where they were maybe loaded at right wing. They had enough guys at right wing, like really good guys, that this right winger needed to do something to distinguish himself. Or as another defenseman who had to distinguish, but they were they weren't in the right place at the right time. But that doesn't stop you from just finding that niche again. So you're a good skater and a good shooter. Well, maybe you should go in the corner and bang somebody. Be more physical. You know, do these things. Maybe you have to fight. Who knows? Just to get your name on the thing. They weren't able to do that, and they never wanted to switch what they were good at.
They weren't adaptable enough.
No, and so they kind of fell by the wayside, and some of them, they played a handful of games in the NHL, they played a lot of games in the minors.
Is that this thing that you've just described to us, of finding your niche and being adaptable from level to level, do you think that those are critical components of making it to the next level as an athlete?
Athlete or just
person?
Just a person, yes. You
not being so rigid, redefining yourself.
Yes, yeah. You just, I mean, you can't go, I mean, and everybody says, you know, blinders on, you know, whatever. You just can't be like this. I mean, you got to open up like this and see the different avenues. And just like we tell our kids, is like, you know, you're gonna be out with your friends. There's a fork in the road. Either you can do the right thing or do the wrong thing. You got to make the right choice. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times people make the wrong choice and they still can rebound from it. But you can't just, you know, go like this. So you have to see, if I do this, would my dad be pissed and kick my ass? Yeah, I'm going to go over here and do it this way and do it the right way and not take that shortcut. Or and just a few examples real quick of, you know, the kids were playing youth sports, and you know, and the kids were big. I mean, they were really good athletes. You know, and they were playing soccer. You know, I think they were 10 years old, 11 years old, whatever it was, and John was always bigger than everybody else. I see him walk off the field, and oh my God, I wonder if he's hurt.
Yeah.
So I walk all the way around the field to say, "You okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm tired." And I effing lost it. I said, "You just walked off the field because you're tired?" I said, you don't come off the field unless the coach pulls you off the field. You just, you know, you have to figure out how to maintain your energy and your focus and stuff like that and whatever it was. And, you know, and I was just like, you don't do that. I mean, that's, you have an obligation to your team of, you know, whatever it is. And whether it's the right way or wrong way, that's how I raised the kids. If, you know, if you're not bleeding to death, your bones not sticking out of your skin, you stay on the field. I mean, that is what you do. And you could tell, all parents can tell if their kid is really hurt or faking their hurt or something. You can always tell. And I could tell as soon as the kid's playing a sport, you know, one of them got really, really mad and was about to do something, and I have a whistle and they like turn. I thought, I know you're about to do it. I mean, so parents have an idea of what their kids are and what they can and can't do.
But I think the point you were making about getting upset with John, or you showing up at all times, is the mindset of not quitting. We don't quit.
We don't quit.
We're committed to a team. We don't quit. We're going to work harder than everybody else. Even if we're the most talented, we're going to lead by example. So, I mean, I think those are the principles you're saying.
Yep.
Because you refuse to let John just quit for comfort. I've never seen John quit for comfort after. I mean, I didn't know him when he was that young. I know him now. I've never seen him quit for comfort. I've never seen any of the children quit for comfort. No. And you know, that's the thing. Is you have an obligation. You have an obligation to and especially if you're one of the leaders of the team, you have an obligation to lead by
example. I mean, you don't have to be a rah-rah guy. You don't have to jump up and down and yell and scream, but you do your job, you do it the way you're supposed to, and you keep moving forward, and everybody's going to follow you. And it's we say this all the time. It's like that Christmas tree. You know, you got a Christmas tree like this, and if you get better and you're going to pull these other guys up. That Christmas tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it keeps going up and up and up.
You're pulling everyone
You're
behind
pulling up
you.
behind you, and that's the mentality of sports. Is it's either you can, and don't get, and there are role players in all sports that aren't going to do it. And I played with guys who were the best of the best, and when they wanted to play, that Christmas tree went like this.
Everybody rose.
It rose.
I want to go back a little bit to, we were talking about how you chose college. You wanted to join a team full of superstars. You wanted to have a coach that would be all over you. You wanted to go to a small school because you knew yourself well enough. So I want to talk about, as the kids were choosing schools, they're very independent people, but how do you think they chose to benefit them? And then I want you to talk about the factors you think that parents, having lived all levels yourself, what things should go in. You just don't choose the school with the best financial package, in my opinion, if it doesn't feel like an environment to thrive for your children. So let's talk about those factors.
So when our oldest Patrick was in high school, he was big. He was 6'2". He was probably about 235 or so, and he was built, and he was a really good athlete, really good football player. His high school coach made him hate football at the end of his high school season. Now, he had chances. He might not have went and played D1 or anything, but he could have went and played somewhere. And he said, "No, I hate this
burnt
sport.
out.
I hate this sport." Mentally, physically, he wasn't burnt out, but mentally, the coach.
That's what I mean. Mentally burnt out.
Just couldn't. I hate it. Every day was miserable. Showing up at the field and all that stuff. Anyway, so all right, he decided he's just going to go off to college.
And I see that a lot with kids.
Yeah.
Whether it's 13 or they're just done.
And so then when, at the time, the high school, the school system they were at now, I mean, it's a great school system now. But what happened was when the other ones were coming up, everything got political. Parents were complaining. The administrator is like, "Hey, we're just here to have fun," and I would sit there with the superintendent and go, "You're missing the point. The point of high school is getting kids ready for the next level, to go to college. Some are going to go academically go to college, and some are going to go athletically through college. But your job is to get them there. So the idea is, yeah, you have the best math program, but you could care less about the sports, and that's maybe one of the only avenues some of these kids have to get to that next level. So you got to look at that as a business. And we'd sit there and we didn't argue. She was really, I really liked her. We just sit there and say, you got to just don't hire somebody just for the sake of hiring them. We got a really big school district here. Let's hire really good people. So anyways, it got real political. So when John and Andrew were freshmen, and they were real good football players. Their coach was like, "There's no freshman ever going to play, blah, blah, blah. I don't care who they are." And so I was like, it was just the mentality they had. So I decided that, I'm done with this political stuff. So we sent him to an all boys Catholic school called Pittsburgh Central Catholic. And it was just like a little college. They would, it was hardcore. The boys had to wear slacks, shirt, tie every day. And it was, and so the twins, John and Andrew, John didn't like it. John was, and
he went back to the high school.
Yeah, so
Andrew stayed.
Andrew stayed and thrived. But John went back to the public school, and I said, "All right, well, you're going to go back here, though, straight A, whatever the case is." And he flourished as well. I mean, he really did great there, unbelievably there. And Andrew was at there, and so recruiting wise, John didn't really care about if he wanted to play in the next level or not. And then when Andrew got recruited to go to Pitt, John was like, "I want to," and he walked on and played until he hurt his back. But the recruiting process is, I said, "Andrew, no matter where you go or what I have no skin in the game. You can pick and choose wherever you want to go. I'm not pushing you to one school or the other school or whatever the case is. So, and where you feel more comfortable. That's all I could care less, because no matter where you go, and I try to explain to him, no matter where you go, you're going to end up meeting a girl, and you're going to end up marrying a girl that doesn't live in Pittsburgh, that's going to be wherever it is, and that's where you're going to end up living. So you decide where you want to go and do this. I have could care less. One of those type things. I think it took the pressure off him to figure out where he wanted to go. And then when Pitt came in, they went there. But the issues I have is I was in construction. I was working a lot of night turn. And so I would go watch them practice. And I'd go and Dave Wannstedt was their coach. But here's the difference between parents. I should say, when they were in high school, I went to the coaches and said, listen, my name is Peter Taglianetti, my son Andrew, my son John, whoever the case may be. It's the last time you're going to hear from me. You'll never hear from me.
So you were
again.
not a helicopter parent.
If my kids don't play, it's on them. That's all I said to them. But I'll tell you, you put them on the field, they'll work their asses off.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk away. Dave Wannstedt was a coach at Pitt. Andrew's going to Pitt, and John's at Pitt. And I'd go watch practice, and I just because I could watch for a couple hours until I have to go to work. And
so do you think all parents should just be hands off like you?
Yes. So yes.
Well, let's make a point about that, because the point of this story.
Well, here's the point of the story is I have to set this thing up. Dave Wannstedt would always come over and talk to me.
Yeah.
And I said, Dave, I'm not that parent.
Maybe you're just the nice guy.
No, you don't go talk. But there was 150 parents all around the fields.
Yes, there were. I was there.
They're all around the field. I said, go talk to them. They're the ones that need it. I don't, I'm here to see them. I'm here to see John and Andrew. I got like an hour and a half and whatever. He'd do it every day. I said, and I see him coming, and I just put my hand up and I just walk away from him. I said, and I really like Dave. Dave's a friend, but it's like, I'm not. You don't have to talk to me. I'm not this parent who's going to yell at you because the kid's not playing. But all these other parents needed that fluff, like, hey, Billy's doing really well. Yeah, I know he's doing. Like all the people back home are saying, I didn't need any of that stuff. And the same thing with Lewis when he went to Bucknell to play. I went to coach and just say, yeah, you'll see me.
So your point is parents don't have to be helicopter parents. Is that the point here?
No, I would tell every high school, college that if any parent shows up at a practice, kick them out. Why?
They just want to see their kids.
No, they don't need to see their kids. They can see their kids at game day. They come after practice, take them to dinner. The next day they can take them to breakfast. They don't have to be there for the 2.5 hours they're on the field. They do not have to be there. They don't need to know what plays they're running. They don't need to know any of this crap. And it boggles my mind that coaches allow them. The coaches allow them because they don't want this parent going on social media saying, "Oh, they were really rude to me." They don't want any of that stuff. They're trying to be nice. And
you're
it's a
different
business.
You are a different.
But it's a business.
You're a different era.
It's a business. I'm paying you $80,000 a year to come to school here through their scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Stay the hell away.
You're so funny. Let's get back on track. So we got the boys. In our story, we've gotten you all the way up through pros, right?
Yep.
And we've gotten the boys through college, into
yep.
playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
On this long road of raising healthy youth athletes, and we should just mention the girls. Corey, you always say best athlete of all the kids, decided not to play in college.
Toughest athlete. Toughest
right?
athlete, yes.
And she made the decision not to play, which is a legitimate thing. Isabella, our youngest, after dancing 20 hours a week and having a career-ending injury, decided she wanted a childhood and not to play professionally as a high school person. Legitimate choice. But what are the things, the principles that I believe as a sports doctor, sports can save society? We learn discipline. We stay fit. We do a lot of things. It's not an easy road. We've talked about a lot of those things. But as a person whose life has been sports, what are the principles that make it worthwhile for parents to get their kids into sports like you did?
Well, one is now we have to change the thing. Before it was for him to socialize and have fun. Mm-hmm. That originally was what sports was: socialize and have fun. Mm-hmm. And then it was then you have a commitment to whatever team you're on, but coachable. have to be coachable. You have to be able to take criticism without going into a shell. And I'm going to digress real quick. So when I was in college, Lou Lamorello, so he knew if I went up to him and I was about to ask him a question, you're about to ask me this question. Because we were just discussing something. He goes, you're going to ask me. And it was like, shit, he knew exactly what, damn it. But he also knew who he could yell at and who he couldn't yell at. If he yelled at some of our, like a couple of guys, he knew they would go into a shell for a while. And it, they have to work their way out of it. And there's other guys they knew he can yell and be the whipping boy for whatever he needed to get accomplished.
Yeah.
And so for him to make a point, he had to figure out who he couldn't yell at and stuff like that. So I was the guy. And for example, he wanted me to play at 205 pounds. I was 205 pounds. He wanted me at 200 pounds. And he didn't like the way guys were practicing and stuff. So he came in one day and he goes, Pete, get on the scale. And I was like 204 and I was supposed to be at 200. And he goes, go get your running gear on. So I go and get my running gear on. And so the concourse of the arena, where the rink is here and the concourse is here, so you can see the rink and the scoreboard and all that kind of stuff. And he took me upstairs. He went into his office, put a tape on. And I remember it was REO Speedwagon. And I remember this because I had to do this so many times that he put 30 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
And I had to run around the concourse for 30 minutes. And like all the guys were on the bench looking at me and, whatever, but they knew that he meant business. So, but he knew I could take it. I wasn't going to back away from anything like that. And so he was able to get his point across by yelling at me. So anyway, he would criticize me and I could take it. He would yell at me, I could take it. There are kids who can't, but kids have to learn that being criticized is not a bad thing. Now, being abusive is something else. And I knew what he was doing. My opinion, what he was doing was not abusive to me. I knew he was making a point and he knew I could take it. Anyway, but there are parents and coaches who are abusive, criticize-wise, that you don't need to do that. That's not your position. Now, your parent can, not abuse you, but can be way more critical than a coach. But the coach is there to make you want to keep playing, not stop playing. And that's a fine line that they run, that they don't know how to do that.
So it's part of your personality that you can take heavy things and that you're resilient. I want to frame this as something I talk about all the time as, how did you show up to practice? And this is what I mean. I talk a lot about in the work that I do with people and with our mindset coach about what posture you show up to do the work. What posture I show up, meaning what am I bringing to the table when I go do surgery? What is my mindset? What posture do you show up to practice? As a lifelong elite athlete, where did you show up? What posture did you show up every day to work hard? In fact, I see you do this even when you were doing construction and as a foreman. You show up with about the same posture. What do you bring to the table, no matter what it is that you're doing, that has made you successful?
Well, you're going to want to be there.
Right.
You have to want to be there. You can't half-ass it, because if you half-ass it in construction, if you half-ass something, somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
Somebody's going to get hurt. A doctor half-asses it, or a nurse half-asses it. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
Sports. In sports, if you're supposed to, it's so hard to explain. So hockey is an aerobic sport with anaerobic abilities, which is you have to be
there's speed for the duration,
and then your anaerobic brings you back down again. One of those type things. But if you're half-assing it and you're near the boards and you're not ready and protecting yourself, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. So you have to come with a mindset you want to be there. If it's miserable there because the atmosphere is miserable everywhere in the whole rink or a ball field, whatever it is, if you show up, I can't believe it. It's a chore now. It's a chore. So you have to have that mindset of, I want to be there.
You want to be there.
And
not half-assing it. What does that mean? Every time you show up your best?
You show up and you work your hardest. You might not be at your best, but you work your hardest. You're not going to like go, if your heart rate's supposed to be X and you're only here, you need to be doing something else. But the other part of it is winning. If you're on a winning team, it's always fun going to the rink. Or if you have some really cool surgeries to do, you love going, oh my God, this is going to be so cool to do. But if you're half-assing it and losing, then it's hard to go to the rink every day. It's hard to show up at your job every day. Or if you're in the business world and your bosses, could care less about how the performance or anything like that, or you don't get any recognition because you're a really good salesperson. Like, oh, what the hell am I doing here? It's miserable.
So show up ready to work, show up wanting to be there. What part of being a champion has to do with wanting it so bad? There's a champion want mindset.
Well, wherever you are, you're part of a team. You're whatever it is, and once you get in hockey in the playoffs, you realize there are guys in your team that are the superstars, and you know that you're going to play a role in this game or this series. That the mindset's got to be, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful. So if for some reason, if I'm a defenseman and they say, hey, Pete, we need you to shift on left wing, and I haven't played left wing in
you do it
20 years, you do
show
it.
Up and
you do it. But your mindset is, I know I'm not going to take any unnecessary chances. I got to look at the score of the clock, the who's on the ice, blah, 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 and you do the little things to make it done. And it's the little things that make you successful. It's not, it's what's that saying? A champion's made when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
So all the stuff you do prep-wise, all the stuff you do in prep before you get on that big stage it's in your head. You know what's going to do. You know what you have to do and know how to perform. And I think the a lot of people don't get those little things off the ice or off the playing field or when my friend Frank and I, when we were younger, all we do is when we were playing catch was throw the ball at each other short hop it. We would just do that for hours, short hopping the ball. And so when you get in the game, it's like you didn't even think about it. It's like, oh my God, what a nice short hop.
Just did it.
Like, what do you mean? We always do that. That's nothing.
Do you think how meticulous to detail? You are an incredibly meticulous person. You like routine and you like things a certain way. Do you think
change?
And you don't. Do you think that comes from the discipline you learned over all these years? There was a routine, there was a cadence to the day. Every detail mattered. Down to when you put your skates on. That translates into our life. Do you think that is something that people learn through the discipline of sports?
Yeah, and it's stuff you pick up. You learn it, but you pick up from other people too. It's and hockey players are the most superstitious people you ever want to meet in your life. It's almost sickening sometimes of some of the stuff we used to do,
Meaning, you left house at the same day, you drank your pot of coffee, you drove to the rink,
and if they watched our warm-ups, and if they really watched warm-ups, that's exactly what they do every single day.
Yeah.
From the first guy who touches the puck to the last guy who touches the puck,
there's a routine.
It's all coordinated.
It gets you into the zone.
And it wasn't orchestrated in the locker room. It happened that way. We win, and we're doing it the next night too. We're doing it the next night too. We're doing it the next night too.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain time, I start getting dressed. I put the socks on, put the skates on, and just sit there for 10 minutes. Second hit, my next stuff goes on. My next stuff goes on. And by the time it was all done, I had like 2 minutes before we were going on the ice. It was choreographed the whole exact way. Everybody.
Just so you know, there is science behind this.
Yes.
That ritual and science makes high performers get into a zone. It's the same in surgery. It's the same. I have not done it as a pro athlete, but I have seen it in the athletes. Everything matters leading up to being in the zone of peak performance.
If you feel comfortable, you have that little extra mindset. And just being comfortable wise, I wore in the pros, I wore the same shoulder pads that I wore in high school.
They're around here somewhere.
And literally,
Right.
they're outlawed in the NHL. I mean, there's like, I think we're one of the last group of people got to do on that stuff. Now they have these like giant fucking things on. But just real quick, we were talking about, and I want to say this to everybody who's going to listen who has kids in sports or in hockey or anything like that. If you notice in the back of their jerseys now, they have the word stop on the back of their jerseys. So if you see a kid back with the stop on it, you don't hit them. That's the mindset of it. But what these kids do now is they realize they're in a safe space. They see a guy coming. Their first reaction is to turn their back to him, even though they're near the boards. But if this guy slips and falls,
It's a danger.
it's a danger.
It's dangerous.
That's what I mean about robotics. So we were always taught how to take a hit, how to give a hit. You never turn your back to somebody when you're near the board. You always get up against it. The board's hard, hits you, the guy falls off. In all sports and whatever it is, you have to realize where you are all the time and be comfortable at it. And that's a lot of the problem. I missed that part, but I want to bring that up. But being comfortable, which means relaxed, which is
part of routine,
superstition, or whatever you want to call it. If you're calm,
you get into the zone. It works in surgery. It works in sports.
We have discussed today getting from what it takes to raise a youth athlete through high school, through college, to these 0.01% of people who actually, whether it's just because you are an extremely talented athlete. I mean, you're 60 years old. I don't see people more coordinated than you. It's remarkable. So there you go. Don't get a big head when I say that. But whether it's because you're just so gifted or because you were smart enough to realize that you had to distinguish yourself very early to make a name for yourself, which you did, or whether you just have this work ethic that nobody else can beat, honestly, those are all the things I think that have brought you on this journey. And we've covered this a little bit, but I want to hear.
Well, let's go back. So real quick, let's go back to when I was younger. I played all the sports. I played tennis. I did play football. I played hockey. I played basketball. So you got the basics of all of everything.
Right.
And so hand-eye coordination. So in hockey, things happen fast. And when you go to baseball, everything's slow. And so the pitcher throws the ball. It's not whatever it is coming in at 80 miles an hour. Well, a hockey puck's coming in at 90 miles an hour. So the baseball is this big. A hockey puck is, this big. So it was slow. So the point is, all those things, the well-rounded athlete growing up.
Well, in lacrosse.
The lacrosse we grew up, we did everything, yeah. But all those things combined takes you to whatever level. So you can always adjust because you have the balanced hand-eye coordination. You have all these different things that you've learned in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But if you never learned those, you're just worried about one sport the whole time. That's the only thing you know, and it's hard to adjust up to that. Yeah,
absolutely right. We were just talking off camera about the fact that 0.001% of all people who try get to the privilege of raising the Stanley Cup or performing at a level that you cannot be more elite. You're the elite of the elite. And for mere mortals like me, we all strive to be champions and to perform at the level that you have performed at. And so I want to know what that feels like to be that way, because the rest of us want to know.
All right. So
it's okay. You can give your answer.
Well, the answer, it's hard to answer the question because everything happens when you're in a situation like that. And even though the Stanley Cup playoffs is basically 2 months long, back then it was every other night. You didn't have time to think about anything. You just get ready for the next game, and then all of a sudden you win the champions. Yeah, you're elated. You jump up, you're out all on the ice. It's stunned, like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this type thing. But you really didn't understand it at all, because as soon as you get back, there was a a parade. There was, they had parties, and it was just like boom, boom. It wasn't for like a couple of weeks later when everything died down a little bit. You're like, oh my God, we just won. And then you had to just get that mindset in your head that, oh my God, we won. But it wasn't, you're don't get me wrong. It was great. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun being around the guy, doing all these things. But it wasn't for like 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you sit there and go like, oh my God. And then what happens is now you get ready for training camp again.
So do you think that was the reaction? And I've seen Stanley Cup celebrations. I know the joyfulness. I know the playing around with the Stanley Cup. Do you think for champions that achieved the top level, that's just the way they work?
Yeah.
They're showing up to do the same thing they grind every day, and it just led to a championship. So it's not a surprise to them.
If you don't,
that's what you taught the boys. Don't celebrate your touchdown. You're going to work. You're doing the same thing every day.
Yeah, you don't have to jump up and down. You don't have to do all these things. And
is that why it felt like nothing to you?
Well, I think because our team was has a mindset that our best player was Mario Lemieux, and Mario was not the rah-rah guy. He really didn't say much, but when he did, you listened. We had guys like Brian Trottier on our team who won 4 Stanley Cups with the New York Islanders that kind of went through the whole. He understood the process. He knew what was going on. Guys like Paul, and nobody had this jump up and down, running around the ice acting like, they score a goal. They think they score a goal and they run around the ice and jumping up and down. We acted like we were there before, and we've
been here before. This is what we do.
This is what we do. It's not that big of a deal, right. Blah blah. And it actually would piss the other team off more that we didn't celebrate.
I like that. I like that justification of the answer, because when you first gave me the answer of, well, it kind of felt like nothing, that alarmed me. But I get it, because every day you were meticulous. Every day you showed up to work. Every day you knew it was going to take a sacrifice. So on the last game of your Stanley Cup final, you were going in to play the same dedication you'd ever did. Your acuity was even sharper. All the things that you had practiced 82 games before were coming together.
Accumulation of energy.
Right.
It all happened in
every detailed manner. I mean, I'm thinking to myself as an elite surgeon, and I expect everyone working around me to function at this elite level. I frequently say, every detail matters to my patient on the bed. Don't skimp on this Charlton 8. Don't skimp. And so when I call people out, it's not because I'm being hard on them. It's because every detail matters. Mm-hmm. Because then when we're done with the miraculous surgery, we're not high-fiving. We've done the job.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. It's exactly it. And around, in my own way, I was saying it this way, but yeah, that was it.
We showed up to the best of our ability. We did our job.
And it's, what have you done for me lately? It's like
until the next practice.
If you win this game here,
yeah.
Well, if you lose the next game, well, you sucked.
Right. Yeah, it's the same. I walk out of room 2. I'm going into room 4. It is the same. Starting over to be elite again. It matters again to this patient. So that's what you're saying.
Well, in sports, the team that loses a championship, mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to feel like crap for a couple weeks or whatever it is. But then
they're right back at it.
They're right back at it again. So
Got it.
So same thing. It's like if you see anybody day to day wearing any championship rings every single day of their life, they're missing the point of that ring.
Gotcha.
The ring is not the ring is not for everybody to see it every given day, because if the ring is for special all right, that guy. You wear it every day, who cares? You're wearing it every day. It's not that big of a deal.
So what you're saying is that excellence is a habit.
It's a
excellence is how you show up every day. And every detail matters.
It's a lifestyle. It's a habit. Whether you every day, and the problem with sports is because we're so regimented, we have a schedule. We know that we're up at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. We know I got to be at 8. We're regimented. Everything we do is regimented. And it's a great thing. Mm-hmm. It keeps everybody in check. They know exactly what they're going to do. I don't know, if you want to go out drinking the night, like that night, and get up the next day and go to practice, well, you better go and you better be practicing the same exact way. Nobody gives a crap, right? And sports is the one thing that, well, not the one thing, but it's a big thing where a lot of guys get lost once they lose that regimented lifestyle.
It's hard to retire.
So that's why we are always so focused. This is what we do. This is it. We know we're going to be here. We don't have to think about that. We just have to go on the ice or whatever ball field and do your job.
Yeah.
And that is the issue. And that's why.
That's really the champion mindset.
Yeah.
Showing up every day as a champion. It's not that champions should be different. Maybe champions are different because every day they show up bringing the things that make them the champion, and not every day the fluctuation of I don't feel like it, etc.
And you're not going to be your best every single day.
But it's a rep.
But it is exactly what you need to do. And you might have a bad game or whatever it is. Well, I knew that if a guy came down on me one-on-one and he beat me, I knew in my head that the guy will never do that again.
Right.
Because I would take a penalty. I would,
And you did. You were the highest penalty.
I would do whatever I had to do to stop that guy from doing that ever again, and knows that, and for him to know that if he comes down to me again, he's going to pay for it. So I mean, that was just the mindset of, you didn't want to make a mistake. You didn't want to embarrass yourself. So you're walking on eggshells for a little bit, but then you're so calm that you can, even if you make a mistake, I don't care.
Execute.
I'm just going to get back at it again. Yeah.
So in our last 5 minutes, we talked a lot about mindset of a champion and being a champion. Tell us, I don't know if you have a favorite memory of your playoff games, but tell us something of all the memories, because you have like a eidetic memory. You remember every point, every play. What is the one that?
Well, obviously it's the first, winning the first cup.
But that's a series of games.
That's a series of games.
Do you remember the last goal of the last game?
Oh yeah, God yeah, I remember all 8 of them. We ended up winning. We wound up winning 8-0. But I assisted on the first goal and the third goal.
As a defenseman.
As a defenseman, yeah. But we ended up winning 8-0. And it was just the strange thing about what I remember, or like the big thing I remember, is that it was 20 minutes to a period. We're up 6-0 going into the third period. There's no way we're going to lose. I mean, there's no way we're going to lose. And we were a team that was, we joked around the whole time. There was never a serious moment in the locker room about anything whatsoever. We were ripping on guys, or, guys just walking around, get their gear off, just walking in the hallway, just, nobody was around. So we're in between the second and third period. And literally, we're screaming at each other. Get the effing puck in, you fucking forwards, we're yelling and screaming at each other. I mean, and so and then Bob Johnson, our coach, comes in with about 5 minutes on the clock, and he talks for a few minutes, and we have a couple minutes just to whatever it was, and we're screaming at each other, and it never happened before. I mean, I don't want to swear in this thing, but I mean, the stuff that was said was crazy, and nobody left the locker room. We're just yelling at each other. And Bob Johnson came there, everybody calms down, and people just like, and he says, 20 minutes, you're going to be part of history. This is going to be one of the greatest things ever, blah, blah, blah. And he looked around, and this is the guy who never raised his voice, never talked bad about it. Everything was always positive, blah, blah, blah. Never swore, never did anything. And he talking and saying all this stuff. We'd be part of history, blah, blah, blah. And he looks around and he goes, don't fuck it up. And the air in the locker room just went, whoo. And he calmed everybody down. I mean, literally, like everybody just like, you see everybody's shoulders go, oh my God. And so we went out and scored 2 more goals, and we ended up winning it. But that little part of,
I can picture
a 4 or 5 minute speech that he gave was absolutely amazing. Absolutely, I mean, literally. I mean, if you knew all the characters on our team, and nobody took anything seriously, everybody was yelling, joking around, telling jokes, blah, 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 no matter where it was. And then it was vicious, really, really vicious. And he just popped the bird, and it just calmed down. chill out. We're good. We got this thing, and
I love that.
we really nothing yet. So that was that part of one single game was going to always be in my head.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. See you next week.